Greetings and assalamu alaikum. Allow us to open up in the most holy name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is his messenger. We would like to greet you on behalf of Closing the Gap. We are live here today, and we would like to greet you with the greeting words of peace and of paradise, as we say in our original language of Arabic, of Assalamu alaikum. We are thankful for those that are tuning in as we are live today. And for those that have been tuning in as we have been playing the classic repeats during this time period, we would also like to extend the greetings on behalf of our dear sister who's not among us today, Sister Starla, and our dear brother, Student Minister James of Assalamu alaikum also. And we would like to ask our listening audience, for those who are tuning in, to continue to keep our dear brother, Student Minister James, in our prayers, where he is doing much better and coming along, and he just excited, and he missed being on the air, though he's not able to be on there today, neither our sister Starla. But we do have in our sister's place with us today another sister who's no stranger to being on Closing the Gap, who's no stranger to filling in. Those around our nation do know her. But at this time, I would like for her to introduce herself in any opening words that she would like to say. So I turn it over to our dear sister, Sister Anisa Muhammad.
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Sister Anissa. I'm based here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a staff writer with the Final Call newspaper. I don't know what other introductions are needed. I think that's good for now.
It is. Hey, look, all you had to say Final Call News. Look how wonderful that is. You in Atlanta. Atlanta is booming. Sister Anisa Muhammad. We thank you, dear sister. Praise be to Allah. We thank you for filling in. We also see greetings on behalf of our dear brother, Student Minister James, who is tuning in also. When I tell you, family, we are excited and delighted to be up and running, to be here live. And we thank y'all for your patience during the time period where we was just showing the repeats, and hope that y'all enjoyed it. And as we get back into the rhythm of things, bear with us in doing so. Student Minister James is so instrumental, of course, in closing the gap, and a lot of times, going after the guests and getting them on. That was part of his department. So now we're working to fill in that gap, which is big shoes. But we're so thankful for our dear brother. And one of the things as we go and check on him and always ask anything we could do and how you doing, his thing is, just keep the show going. So we are very appreciative for those that's tuning in. Please continue to tune in. Please continue to support, to give your donations, to give your time, your efforts, and to share about Closing the Gap. Today, we look forward to hearing from a brother that's not a stranger to Closing the Gap. And that brother is from the research department, a student in the ministry out of the great city of Memphis. And I'm talking about none other than our dear brother, Student Minister Demetric Muhammad, who we're waiting and anticipating to come with a very important subject matter that we're going to be dealing with today that I think is just so useful. And that subject matter is dealing with from beef to brotherhood. And, as a person that grew up in the studio, a student of hip hop, beef was always around, to the point that Biggie had a song talking about beef, and different rappers talk about beef. So we're going to get into something that is so crucial and so timely today, with so much that is going on and dealing with from beef to brotherhood, above and beyond conflict resolution. So that's what we're going to get into today as we anticipate our dear brother. And hopefully that we can learn something that we can share with those that have gotten into beef, those that are going through things, where we could get some remedies that's going to help to heal us as a sick people in our condition and what we have been doing, and especially in the field of hip hop and abroad. I know, Sister Nisa, we're from two different generations, but I know, like, growing up in hip hop, beef was a big thing. With this generation, of course, I know with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake, but speaking from your generation, as we wait and anticipate our dear brother, how have that beef situation been with the younger crowd like yourself and in your generation?
Yes, sir. And I think we still see, just the tension
Mm-hmm.
in our rap and hip hop community with, we saw Young Dolph in Memphis.
Yes,
Of
yes,
course, a
yes.
few years before that, Nipsey Hussle.
Right, right, right.
I know there were a few like Houston rappers, both male
Yeah,
and female. So now
right,
it's just men, dying, but it's also female rappers that's also dying with these so-called beefs or whatever, gunshots, bullets, what have
right,
you. And so I
right.
think it's just a trend that is just continuously that we see continuously going, and a lot of these rappers aren't necessarily big names, but
Mm-hmm.
they matter to the local communities. They
That's
might not be nationally known, but they still matter to whatever community that they were a part of, and they, all the names might not be in the news, like Nipsey Hussle or even
right,
Young in Memphis, but
right.
that's still a life taken somewhere. And so I think, I like to say, it's just a continued trend that we continue to see even in my generation, unfortunately.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right, dear sister. Recently, right here in Tampa, there was a rapper that Brother Tony out of Miami, our regional headquarters, he brought up that's from Jacksonville that was, killed right here in this city as he was celebrating, I believe, his birth anniversary here. And somebody killed him, So just imagine during that time of celebration. He's a local artist making a name for himself and whatnot, and now he's gone. And it's just unfortunate that there are so many lives that are lost. And when you think of beef, that it can actually have not only two individuals going through something, but it can actually turn a whole coast against another coast. That
Mhm.
is something that's incredible, and not in a good way, but to see two coasts going against each other, east against west over beef. That's what, I grew up in our generation of time with hip hop and how it was during that time period. So we look forward to our dear brother just discussing and talking about not just getting into the topic of from beef to brotherhood, but what some of the solutions, what are some of the things that we could do as preventative measures that can help us even from small beef, that it doesn't grow into large beef where it's not just talking no longer. It's like when I see you, I'm gonna get you. Look out. Now we have to move with our bike, watching over our bike and everything like that. So it's getting to that point sometimes, and it's just very, very unfortunate when it comes to that actually a life is lost, because it's not just
Mhm.
affecting the individual, but what about the person mom? What about their children? What about the fans, especially when it comes to hip hop and whatnot? So, you're taking away uh in a selfish side, something that you're going against somebody, but it's affecting people, and to the point that it could be local, regional, or either worldwide. So it's very, very unfortunate. So we look forward to it, getting into it today. I see our dear brother in the back. We'll get ready to bring our dear brother on, so we could get into this topic. So, family, once again, without further delay, we have our dear brother that's a part of the student ministry class and part of the research team, and has been doing a lecture that was entitled From Beef to Brotherhood. And I got a chance to watch it. It's available on YouTube. So let us welcome our dear brother and student in the ministry who's part of the research team, our dear brother, Brother Demetric Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Chad. How are you this evening?
Fine, by Allah's grace, and good to see you, dear brother.
It's good to see you as well, and good to see our dear sister Anissa as well.
Praise be to Allah. We wanted to extend the greetings from Sister Starla and also Student Minister James of Assalamu alaikum, also, dear brother.
Wa alaikum salam. Please return the greetings to our dear brother, Student Minister James, as well as our dear sister, Sister Starla.
Inshallah, we'll do. We was breaking the ice and just kind of talking about between the generation gap of, how I grew up in music around our age period, and also around the period, today's artists, talking to Sister Anissa with her generation, and she was just sharing how some of the same things that we experience in hip hop during our time period that could take a coast against another coast, that even the younger generations like ourselves, have experienced, and also in hearing it from the different rappers, the different artists, even from locally to all the way on a regional and national level. So it's still going on. So I believe that this topic of discussion is so important, dear brother, and we welcome you, thank you, and we're ready to get into it. So we would just like to open it up, for to get us started, however you want to do it, any opening statements before we get into it. And of course, we have questions, and we also want to encourage our listening audience to make sure that you present questions also as we get into this topic, from beef to brotherhood, above and beyond conflict resolution. So keep that in mind, family, as you're hearing and tuning in, that if there's any questions, please also present your questions. So at this time, I turn it over to you, Student Minister Demetric Muhammad.
Brother Chad and Sister Anissa, I have to say that we are so honored and so happy to have the privilege and the opportunity to be with you once again. We thank Allah for closing the gap broadcast, and we thank Allah for the work that you all are providing for the Nation of Islam, the believing community, those who number amongst our supporters, our friends, as well as those brothers and sisters who may not yet have decided that they want to be an official registered member of the nation, but they tune in each week to Closing the Gap and find the content edifying and uplifting. So it's my honor and my privilege to be here. And I'm particularly honored to be here to talk about this subject that has become near and dear to my heart, as I happen to reside in a city where my dear sister Anissa, she also used to reside in the great city of Memphis, Tennessee. But even though it's a great city nowadays, like many other cities, is not necessarily a good city in terms of the quality of life in poor communities where our people live. It's often the scene of violent crimes, vicious crimes, homicides. And so as a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we feel that it is our duty, we feel that it is our mission to go among our brothers and sisters with a word that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that we are students of, such that this word might be imparted to our people, our beloved people, who are so much like the people in the scripture, when the prophet Hosea says in chapter 4, verse 6, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. So we have been teaching this series, and some have asked us to put it into book form. I don't know if it'll go into book form, but we wanted to just go into the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, along with the Quran, particularly, as well as the Bible, and to identify the principles and the behaviors and the teachings about conflict resolution, peace in the streets, and brotherhood. And one of the things that has, I think, been eye-opening, that is a part of the way of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad pursued a path of unity among our people. He pursued a path with his powerful message and majestic teachings that showed us how we are blood of each other's blood, bone of each other's bone, flesh of each other's flesh. And in the process of his work among us, pursuing unity and brotherhood, one of the side effects was what people call today in professional terminology, conflict resolution. So even though the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan never identified their message as teaching conflict resolution to the Black man and woman of America, conflict resolution has been a beneficial side effect of the widespread proliferation of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's message among those of us who have heard that message, have accepted that message, who believe in that message, and are applying that message in our lives. And this reminds me of a time that some people know about, maybe a lot of the younger generation doesn't know a whole lot about, but in the late 1980s and early 1990s, there was a period in our nation's history, in the history of the rebuilding of the Nation of Islam, as guided by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, where the brothers of the FOI ultimately became known in certain cities as the Dope Busters. And there is a lot of lore and legend surrounding the Dope Busters. But in my conversations with those brothers, who many of whom were in Washington, D.C., where it began, coming out of the Fruit of Islam class of Muhammad Mosque number 4, where at that time our brother, who was Brother William at that time, he's now known as Brother Abdul Sharif Muhammad, who was Minister Farrakhan's Southern Regional Representative. The Dope Busters didn't begin as this crime-fighting force. The Dope Busters begin as the Brotherhood of the Fruit of Islam, doing what is our first work, taking the message, the life-giving teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught by Minister Farrakhan into public housing complexes in Washington, D.C., specifically Mayfair Mansions and Paradise Valley. And what happened was that the beneficial side effect of the presence of the FOI with the Final Call newspaper, with our discipline, with our training, we brought a presence with us that the beneficial side effect was that whenever the brothers of the FOI showed up into the apartment community, the young brothers and sisters who were selling drugs and who were involved in criminal activity, they left the apartment community while the brothers of the FOI were there ministering and teaching and sharing the truth with our people in the Final Call newspaper. And so that beneficial side effect was noted by the community residents and the management of the community. And so it was at that point that they asked the brothers, is there a way that you all could be over here more often? Is there a way that you all could be over here in some type of full-time capacity? Because when you all show up, the dope boys get out of town. And so, as they say, the rest is history. So this points us to the power, the inherent power in Islam, and specifically the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that produces peace, produces order out of chaos, produces an upliftment of the self-esteem and the morals of a community that replaces the self-hatred and the low self-esteem that is frequently what we find as a result and a residue of our Black Holocaust, the suffering of our people in this society for more than 400 years. So I'm excited to talk about this subject because I think that Allah is blessing us to organize these principles in such a way that we can take it to different cities and offer it to those brothers and sisters in the nation and outside of the nation as something of a how-to to effectuate conflict resolution, and really above and beyond conflict resolution, because my argument is that brotherhood is the goal. conflict resolution is a beneficial side effect. So if you pursue brotherhood and unity, you will naturally produce conflict resolution.
Praise be to Allah. Great introductory, dear brother. We thank you once again for being on, and look forward to your participation in the show and giving us your viewpoint and the highlights, the glows, the grows, and everything else. At this time, we're going to turn it over to our dear sister Anissa, for the first questions to start us off. Sister Anissa, the floor is yours.
Yes, praise be to Allah. So I want to ask, before we get into some of the solutions and real talk and everything, I want to just ask, what have you seen as some of the top reasons that peace is broken in the Black community? And, just what do you see as the root of some of these various conflicts and that we see in our community?
That's a great question, Sister Anissa, because in our research for this series, one of the things that was very eye-opening for us is that there are very important studies that have been done in communities that have high incidence of violent crime. And many of the studies point to that as a root cause, the overwhelming majority of violent crime and homicide in poor communities revolves around some issue pertaining to either real or perceived disrespect. And this was very eye-opening for me to happen upon in the research, because it made me to think about certain powerful ayats from the Holy Quran, particularly Surah 49, which is called in the Arabic Al-Hujurat, or the apartments. And I love Maulana Muhammad Ali's translation of Al-Hujurat as the apartments, because in many of our cities, that's where our people live. And in many of our cities, that's where most of the violent crime takes place. And in many of our cities, that is where there are massive amounts of Black people, Latino people, and poor white people who are there, but they are not there in a wholesome way. They are not there in an enlightened way. And frequently our ignorance is the precipitant factor that causes us to disrespect one another. And in the research, it showed that respect is a much more valuable commodity in poorer communities. And some of the researchers made observations where they pointed to very wealthy people, for example. Could you imagine someone like Steve Jobs, or Bill Gates, I should say, he's still alive. Could you imagine Bill Gates being upset if from across the room he saw someone, maybe, as we say in the street language, mean mugging him? Could you imagine Bill Gates being upset if someone bumped into him or stepped on his shoe? Could you even imagine Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or some wealthy person being upset if you flirted with their woman? You see? So they were pointing out that because the wealthy and the elite and millionaires and billionaires and even 100,000 heirs, because of their acquisition of power, money, and status, if they receive some minor issue of disrespect, they just will remove themselves from the place where they're experiencing the disrespect and go home and enjoy their money, their power, and their status. But in poorer communities where the people don't have power, they don't have a lot of money, they don't have a great status, then issues of respect and disrespect are much more important. So in words, I may not have money, I may not have power, I may not have respect, I may not have status, pardon me, but the one thing I do have is my respect. And I refuse to let you take my respect And because if I let you take it, then everybody in our little neck of the woods, in our neighborhood, in our community will know that I allowed you to disrespect me. And then others will come thinking that they can also disrespect me. And so when you add to that the heavy presence of firearms, when you add to that the fracturing and breaking of our homes, when you add to that the promotion of drugs and the promotion of promiscuity in our communities, you have a toxic stew that the end result is that poor communities throughout America have become the laboratories where violent homicides are the experiment each and every day. And we are seeing a rise and a great spike in violent homicides in the city that I reside. And so respect is one of those root causes that even if there are other mitigating circumstances, after the dust settles and the smoke clears, and when you sift through all of the tangential or secondary causes, at the root of many of these violent homicides are issues pertaining to disrespect.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, dear brother, for that wonderful answer. I'm going to go to our listening audience. We have a question that is posed by our dear brother Tony Muhammad out of Mosque number 29 in Miami. And he asked a question. Say, Assalamu alaikum, brother minister. Whenever rappers or celebrities or well-known people among us beef with one another in public, how should the followers and students of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan publicly address these beefs on social media or otherwise?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say is this. As students of the minister, we always are interested or should be interested in seeing unity and brotherhood prevail among our people. That's even found in the 49th surah of the Quran and other places, where Allah insists that the Muslims are those who always are to encourage peace and reconciliation among two parties that are fighting or at odds with one another. Mm-hmm. And it even says to, in a certain place, fight that which refuses, to come to peace among the brotherhood. So as students of Minister Farrakhan, we should always do what we can and share wisdom and guidance to help, whether they are celebrities or whether they are local persons or whether they are people in our family, people on our job, people in various professional organizations that we are part of. Mm-hmm. We know that whatever we are part of, it can't be strong if we are at odds with one another and beefing with one another. So the believers should encourage the reconciliation of these celebrities and rappers that may be beefing. Mm-hmm. I understand, as a young person who's coming of age was aided by the music of hip hop. Mm-hmm. We certainly understand that hip hop in its basic orientation is very competitive. We understand, that there is a tradition of battle rap, if you will. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, when music corporations took control of hip hop music, mm-hmm. then we saw battle rap become a precipitant of actual murder and homicide. We mm-hmm. saw the battle rap morph into beefs that ensnared groups of people, various camps. Everybody knows about Tupac versus Biggie, and there have been other popular hip hop beefs over the years. So even though we understand that there is an aspect of the culture where there is, we could say, healthy battle rap, our enemies are interested in using hip hop music and the culture to foment real world beefs and conflicts that extend far beyond the studio, where the recordings of diss tracks take place. There is that root cause again of disrespect that lies at the root of most violent homicides in poor communities. And in hip hop culture, when there's a beef, each artist competes with who can write the best diss track. So who can disrespect the other one the best? The second thing I would say is that we should never present the wisdom and the guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in such a way as though Minister Farrakhan has taken sides, because the minister is not on Kendrick Lamar's side against Drake. He's not on Drake's side against Kendrick Lamar. The minister, were it agreeable to both parties, I'm sure would offer both of those brothers guidance and the means by which they could unify and manifest the real untapped power that our popular entertainers have. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in a clip I think I shared in some of my social media pages, he was talking in 2016 to the cultural community in Atlanta, Georgia, as a part of the Holy Day of Atonement weekend's activities there. And the minister said something very powerful in that message. And it's amazing because I shared that message on our YouTube channel, and YouTube sent me a notification that they had removed it because Louis Farrakhan's encouraging rappers not to fight and kill one another violated their community guidelines. But in that magnificent message by our beloved minister and teacher, he made a very profound point. He said that as long as you are beefing with your brother, you can't sit down with your brother and put your money together. That's very, very profound, because the question arises, who is behind the beefs? Whose interests are served by having wealthy Black entertainers argue, criticize, condemn, and disrespect not only one another, but in the recent beefs, we have seen them raise the stakes, or I say lower the stakes, in terms of the personal nature of the diss tracks, where we see artists begin to address the family members and the loved ones and members of the crew of their opposition, if you will, you see. And so the minister let it be known, peace is a requirement so that you can unite your resources, because we have a crisis in Black entertainment. It's not just that BET, Black Entertainment Television, is owned by wealthy white people, but by and large, all of Black entertainment is owned, controlled, and directed by wealthy white people. Now, that ain't some racist statement, but it is a problem if you don't find wealthy Black people similarly owning white entertainment, or wealthy Black people similarly owning Asian entertainment, or wealthy Black people owning Latino entertainment. I mean, it is something of a, I would say, understood reality that whatever people is the originator of the cultural form of expression, that they are also the owners and the controllers and the directors of their own cultural expression and forms of entertainment. That kind of goes without saying. So it's problematic when that's the case for other ethnicities, other communities, other groups of people. But where Black people are concerned, we see the master-slave paradigm inside music. And so as long as artists beef, as the minister said, they're not going to put their monies together and say, you know what? We could take back ownership and control of Black music, of hip hop music, of Black movies, of Black television shows for the benefit of Black people, and then be the equal of all other people who own the art form that they create. So I think those are the attitudes and some of the practices that students of Minister Farrakhan should be involved in when we see high profile conflicts among our people.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, sir, for that answer.
Thank you, my brother.
Yes, sir. And so just, in this same vein, just still talking about rap and hip hop community, of course, the minister has shared a lot of many words, messages to our rap and hip hop community and artists over the years. And, he's talked about how music itself can do more than a lecture can in some regard. And so and also just the responsibility of our artists themselves. And so, my question is just, how are his words still relevant today, and what can artists do to help stop this trend that we see in the industry that can result in someone dying?
The minister's words are always important, and they are the most relevant resource that artists and entertainers have access to, especially because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has spent his life touring and traveling and teaching and preaching and exhorting and admonishing and guiding and nurturing our people away from the enemy's plan to keep us divided and to keep us in violent opposition to one another. So the minister's ministry represents a treasury of guidance that all of our people, but especially the artists and entertainers, have access to. I'm reminded of when our brother in this city, the rapper Young Dolph, was murdered. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, there were people who were so shaken by it that they were making certain video appeals to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to come to Memphis to speak into the current crisis at that time. And the minister called myself and Brother Student Minister Ilya Rashad and Brother Student Minister Abdul Muthaki, and we were all on a conference line with him. And he wanted to know if we thought that he should come to Memphis, to speak to our people, regarding the death of our brother. And even though none of us knew that the minister would be calling us, and we certainly had not collaborated or coordinated our thoughts on it, we all were pretty much in unison that the minister had already done his job, and that we were certainly not going to lay upon our beloved minister's shoulders the duty and the responsibility in the middle of a global pandemic to come out into the public to speak to our people that we should not kill one another, because he's done it for decades. And so the minister said, well, you all have the right answer, because Memphis is a city where I have 3 ministers in Memphis. He said, you all have my word and you have my way, and you can give it to the people on my behalf. And so the minister has a long track record of giving our people exactly what we need. And what's so important and special about Minister Farrakhan's guidance is that it's not judgmental, it's not condescending, it's not self-righteous. Anytime you listen to the minister is always, even if he has to admonish us or give us a whipping, he gives it to us like a loving parent, a loving mother, a loving father, and you know that the minister only wants what's best for us, and you ask, what can artists do? I think artists have to be more deliberate in seeing themselves as leaders. And that's something that the minister has over the years worked to get them to see, that, yeah, maybe you started out as just a rapper. Maybe you started out as just a poet. Maybe you started out as just an actor. Maybe you started out as just a b-boy or a DJ or a graffiti artist, you see. But because of the popularity of hip-hop culture nationally and globally, you have been raised to a level of leadership and great influence. So you've got to recognize that the things you do, the words you say, they matter beyond just your personal predilection to do what you want. When you're in a leadership position and people are watching you, then you have to conduct yourself in such a way that those who might be influenced by what you do are influenced in a positive direction and influenced in the way that is good for our people. So our artists need to be much more deliberate about being leaders and not just hiding behind the fact that, well, I'm just a rapper. I'm just an entertainer. Raising children is for mothers and fathers to do. You know, somebody posted a quote on social media that I thought was very on point. And I have to paraphrase, I don't remember it verbatim, but it said something to the effect that, you know, rappers send their children to private schools to get a good education, but their lyrics send your children into jails and prison and no education. And so it was a very profound statement. It certainly is not a reflection of every artist, but many of the mainstream popular artists, they get radio play and airtime and are strategically put before the largest possible audiences. Their lyrics are frequently toxic. And so artists have to recognize, as the minister has encouraged them for many years, to accept the duty and the responsibility of leadership.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, sir. I'm going to share some of the questions that's coming from our listening audience also at this time. Again, this is from our dear brother Luqman Muhammad. He said, Assalamu alaikum. In your lecture series From Beef to Brotherhood, you spoke a lot on self-demons. When one is on the path of God, a lot of Leviathan moments. Is this a time to isolate from others, or is it better to let it come in front of others no matter the outcome it causes?
I think that, you know, that question would be better answered if I understood more of the context, you know, because even though we never want our personal character defects to ill affect others, there is a therapeutic value to community life. Allah says to us in the Holy Quran, I have created you into tribes and families that you may know one another. I believe the 76th surah of the Quran is entitled Al-Insan. Then Maulana Muhammad Ali translates that as the man. But insan, when you trace it to its Quranic Arabic roots, it means that the human being is by nature a social creature. So I don't know that isolation is best to hide our character defects, But I would say that if our character defects are to the point where we cannot get along in peace with those in our community, then we obviously have to absent ourselves from community life to such time as we can be in the community without having what is ailing us to ail others. And you see this philosophy even in the administration of the restrictive law of Islam as given to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad by Master Fard Muhammad. It is a modified version, I would say, of the full-throated, strong law of the Quran, sometimes called the Sharia law, that is very, very harsh in its punishments. But Master Fard Muhammad gave to us not the Sharia law that is appropriate in Islamic societies, but he gave to us the restrictive law that is appropriate in these morally bankrupt societies that he found us living inside of. And in that law, we don't stone you, we don't behead you, we don't chop off one of your hands and then chop off your foot on the opposite side. If you have character defects that are such that you are breaking the law, then we just give you a time in isolation as you wrestle with your demons, the leviathans of self. And then after that time, you can come back, because community life is very helpful. In fact, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said some years ago that he really wished we did not have to give you time out of the mosque, but he wished that he could give you time in, meaning that we had something that could be of benefit and help to those of us that Satan's society has ill affected to a great degree. And I believe that that was one of the motivations for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in recommending Dianetic auditing to the believers' membership of the Nation of Islam, because there's no way to be in such a wicked society as America and not be affected by it. I'm reminded of a great movie, Brother Chad, called The Shawshank Redemption. And you remember
yes,
Andy Dufresne at a certain point,
yes,
as he's escaping from the prison, he has to swim through, I believe, 100 yards of sewage. And fortunately for him, the night that he escaped, it was a great storm and rain. So when he came out of the sewer drain, the rainwaters washed over him. But there's no way for Andy Dufresne to have swam through 100 yards of sewage and not get any of that sewage on him.
Right.
So we are in a world where we have to fight and wrestle against being ill affected by the immorality of this society.
Yes. Praise be to Allah. Our dear brother Luke Muhammad said that the answer was in perfect context of the question. So he
all praises due to Allah. All praises due to Allah.
Praise be to
Allah. Praise be to Allah. And then we had another audience question. What is the resolution to the conflict of this behavior? And it's not specific what behavior, but I guess we can infer from the conversation. You know, I know you talked about just the levels of disrespect. You talked about, we talked about the hip hop rap community. And so I guess just in the context of what's been spoken about.
That's a great question. I think that, I don't know if we have the slides that we wanted to show, but I know that our basic text for our message, which I was very, very inspired to share, came a lot from the 49th surah of the Holy Quran. And in the 49th surah of the Holy Quran, Allah begins to give to us the principles as well as the behaviors that we should practice to create peace. And so the beautiful thing about the teachings of the Holy Quran is that, you know, sometimes people see the very dramatic transformation of Muslims and they think that, you know, there's some magic somewhere. You know, I remember when Minister Malcolm was assassinated and reading one of the editors of the New Amsterdam News, and he was talking about he's writing an obituary of Malcolm in the New Amsterdam News, and he was saying that, you know, he was hoping that whatever miraculous transformation that produced Malcolm didn't die along with Brother Malcolm. And so we can say that produced Malcolm is very much alive and well as it relates to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as taught by Minister Farrakhan. And so the teachings of the Holy Quran effectuate conflict resolution by really conflict prevention in showing the believers the proper behavior modification that will produce peace, not only peace in our interpersonal relationships, but also peace within ourselves. And so we begin to go into that 49th surah, which is a fascinating surah because it's only 2 sections, as Maulana Muhammad Ali creates section headings, even though the section headings are not a part of the Quran, but they are great addition for the Quran by Maulana Muhammad Ali to help the reader to see how certain ayats or passages go together. And so we utilize it as our main text because when we saw that disrespect was at the root of most violent homicides, and then this surah, the first section, deals with respect for the Prophet. And then the second section deals with respect for Muslim Brotherhood. But those are just the phrasings that Maulana Muhammad Ali placed on them to help the reader to understand that these verses go together under this main idea. Really, those ayats communicate respect not just for the Prophet, although certainly, but also respect for people in general, good principles of life to follow in general. And one of the ones that we spent some time on is, I believe, in 49 and 6. I had these slides here somewhere, but I don't know what happened to them. But I'm going to just share a couple points in terms of how do we, you know, resolve these conflicts. 49 and 6 reads, "O you who believe, if an unrighteous man brings you news, look carefully into it, lest you harm a people in ignorance and then be sorry for what you did." Now, I have said that if I had an audience of nothing but brothers and sisters from street organizations, I would really love to teach them that ayat, because many times in the life of the streets, we end up harming people in error because some unrighteous person brought us some news, brought us a report, you see, and most of them don't have an investigative apparatus to ferret out the truth when controversial statements are made or controversial reports come back to them. So here is a very powerful antidote to many of the kinds of conflicts we have in the Black community, where we oftentimes go off of he said, she said, they said, you know, and we never go and find the truth of it. So Allah is saying to us, oh, you who believe, and, you know, in my teaching of that ayat, Brother Chad, I said, just take the unrighteous off of it, because none of us are truly righteous. You know, because some folk would read that ayat and say, well, that don't apply to me because I'm righteous, you see. But I'm reminded of when the Bible says that all of our righteousness is as filthy rags when it comes before God.
Yes.
So I just say, when anyone brings you news, look carefully into it, lest you harm a people in error and then be sorry for what you did, you know. And then Allah goes into, you know, how we should not make fun of one another. You know, in the Black community, we have this thing called roasting. You know, back in the day, they called it playing the dozens.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, people, regardless of, you know, they don't mind if you're joking about somebody else, but, you know, a set can go quickly from we all laughing with you to a person feeling like you're laughing at you.
Yes.
You know? Allah condemns such. Allah condemns calling one another by nicknames, you see. And the worst nickname that we have is not Ray Ray and Pookie, but the worst nickname we have is the N-word, because the N-word is frequently at the scene of every murder, every rape, every robbery, every carjacking. The N-word is always dubiously present. And so there is an emotional energy associated with that type of terminology being used that, you know, Allah is condemning the use of nicknames. So throughout this surah, we just kind of go and unpack these ayats to show, my God, what if this became the way in which we lived our lives in the Black community? I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, he said, brother, I will not rest until the Holy Quran is the law under which my people live. So the Quran is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wanted the Black man and woman of America to use as our standard of conduct and behavior. It is the Holy Quran that Allah revealed through Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that took the Arabs during their time of ignorance, called Jahiliyyah. They were tribal, and the tribes had beefs. They argued. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes they killed one another. But Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of his, I don't want to say it wasn't a nickname as such, but they used to call him Amin. Anyone called Amin or Amina is a very trustworthy person. It's a person that is trustable beyond reproach and is known for being trustworthy. So in one episode in the Sirah, or the biographical material on the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, we read where the black stone had come out of its place at the Kaaba, and all of the major tribes in Mecca, they were in disagreement over who would have the honor of repositioning the black stone in its place. And so they went to Amin. They went to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because they all wanted the honor. And the Prophet said, well, why don't you take, you know, a garment, a tapestry, some piece of cloth, and place the stone in the center. And then each of the four major tribes, they would take a corner of the sheet that the stone is on, and that they would together, just look at the wisdom of the Prophet. See, because the subject is going from beef to brotherhood. The issue of the stone being out of its place, that was a bone of contention. Conflict surrounded it. So how did Allah guide the prophet? He guided them toward not saying, well, we're going to pick straws or pick a number, and somebody is going to be a definite winner, No, he showed them that if you follow the guidance of Allah, you don't have to be in a state of constant conflict. You can actually go from beef to brotherhood. So there's this idea that in Islam, if we follow its principles, precepts, and teachings, we are able to take a people who are like the old Arabs. We like the new Arabs because we are tribal. We vice lord and gangster disciple. We blood and crip and Latin kings. We Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian. We Sunni, Shia, 5% of Nation of Islam, Hebrew, Israelite. So yeah, we are tribal people. And we need more than any other people to be trying to go from beef to brotherhood. I am arguing that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said about he wouldn't rest until the Holy Quran is the law under which his people live. I think that begs that we go into the Quran to mine out the Quranic message that we can give to our people to show our people how to live a civilized way of life, because our people never really have been taught how to live a civilized way of life. And just one more thought around this issue of respect versus disrespect. Now, a lot of us we know that right across the street from the Final Call building in Chicago for many years was the Respect for Life bookstore. And you've even seen different products and, marketing attempts, believers over the years, respect for life, this, respect for life, that. But some people don't know or have forgotten that Respect for Life was a lecture series by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan at the Final Call building in the early days of the rebuilding of the Nation of Islam. He was teaching a series called Respect for Life. And if you go among our people, a lot of us stay confined in our homes at the mosque, but you got to get out and go among your people. You got to go in the highways and byways, the jails, the prisons, the schools. You got to go where our people live. And you'll see that in 2024, our people do not know how to live a righteous, civilized way of life. So we have a lot of work to do to teach them. So this series, I pray, adds to the resources that the believers have to quickly identify the teachings in the Quran and from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan of how to go from beef to brotherhood.
Very powerful, dear brother. While you was talking about that, I was thinking, and I had a question on that same vein. Like, why do you think as a people, and even abroad, that we gravitate toward shows, like the Ricky Lakes, like the Jerry Springers, that used to be the music of boasting and bragging, the reality TV, etc., that involve conflict, and beef, and we get off on that. The old school, remember World Star Hip Hop, and you talked about that in your lecture, but we gravitate towards that. And not only do we do that, but why is it allowed also in this day and time with the results that it have produced from things that have been aired, and it's just airing out there. The laundry is just, it ignites a lot, and it could go overboard, and lives are laws, fighting happens, all of this stuff, and we just eat it up. So why do you think we gravitate toward that, and why do you think it's just being allowed as promotion and being out there?
Well, Brother Minister Chad, I think that we have to look at the history and the history of how we as a people have been reared in this society. I think I found the slides. I may have a slide that addresses that, that we may just show for the audience, because there is a great history where in the Black community, we were always encouraged toward violence toward one another. I'm going to see if this is one of the slides here.
Okay.
So this is from an academic journal article entitled "To See Who Was Best on the Plantation: Enslaved Fighting Contest and Masculinity in the Antebellum Plantation South." And one of the slaves we quoted here, he says, "The fights were more for the white folks' enjoyment." So there is something of a history where, you know, this bloodlust, you know, this quest to see us brutalize one another that we did on plantations for the enjoyment of the overseers and the plantation owners, the slave masters. The residue of that continues. And you're right, for a long time, World Star Hip Hop was a popular internet destination that trafficked in the most savage and undignified fight videos of Black folk disrespecting Black folk, male, female, male, parent, child, husband, wife, and they became rich as a result of that. In that message that Minister Farrakhan gave to the artists in 2016, he talked about how when Source first came out, it always featured the beefs. So we have learned, we have been educated in taking delight in the brutalizing of one another, you see? And so this kind of fascination that we have, it didn't just happen. It's not necessarily an organic kind of development, but it is something that we have been accustomed to. As the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan coined the phrase, it is a socially engineered savagery.
Wow, that's powerful. Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing that. Praise be to Allah.
Yes, praise be to Allah. And so, you know, I want to ask, just for people that want to get involved in, you know, just conflict resolution, you know, what are some skills needed to be able to successfully resolve some of the conflicts that we see amongst our people?
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said that the greatest of all virtues is truth. Truth is the most important quality that we have to be truthful if we want to involve ourselves in conflict resolution. But we also have to love truth above personality. I remember many years ago, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did a message where he talked about that in the conflict between Israel and Palestine, there needed to be the presence of an honest broker. He was saying that, you know, America and some of the other people that were involved, they were not honest brokers. And so you can't help people who are at odds with one another. You can't help them resolve their beef if you lean to one side or the other. So having a love for truth, and see, when you love truth, your first concern is what is right. And once you know what is right, then you can know who is right. But you can't be prejudiced going into a conflict resolution setting and be leaning toward this side or the other side. So fortunately, over the years, Minister Farrakhan and various ones of his ministers have been sought out by various parties in our community. And the request has been, help us. We want to come before you because there's a beef brewing. There's some type of conflict afoot, and it could get out of hand. And we both agreed that the nation could help us, you see. And that's because our people know by and large that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is not going to play favorites. He's not going to take sides. The minister wants to know, what is the truth? Where does the truth lie? And then we have to have a leaning and a proclivity towards reconciliation. And that's one of the reasons why we put as I would say, a subtitle to the conversation tonight, above and beyond conflict resolution. Because conflict resolution, you can resolve conflict, but the two parties may agree that they're not going to kill each other, but then they just go their separate ways. So conflict resolution by itself is a low bar. Don't get me wrong, it's needed. But ultimately, we don't want just conflict resolution. We want brotherhood. We want reconciliation. That's what the history records was the effect of the prophet among the disparate Arab tribes. Those that came under the influence of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they ceased to squabble. They ceased to be at odds with one another. And what Allah gave him, that he gave to the people, gave the people the ability to no longer see one another as adversaries, but to see one another as brothers and sisters. And again, this is above and beyond mere conflict resolution. Judges in courtrooms, they resolve conflicts every day. But the plaintiff and the defendant don't necessarily leave the courtroom and say, you're my brother. We're going to go and have dinner together. We're going to go and build community together. I'm going to look out for your children. You're going to look out for my children. I'm going to protect your property. You're going to protect mine. You see? So this kind of thinking has to inform those of us. You said skill. I would say, it's a skill. It's certainly, if it's not a skill, it's an attitude. It's a leaning. It's an orientation of mind. It's the way we have to approach conflict resolution, because we are aiming for a much higher result than just keeping our people from killing one another. I mean, just think about that. That's not, a long-term goal of a people that is rising. We just want to keep, the people from killing one another. Well, that's a low bar. We don't just want that. We want brotherhood. Why? Because part and parcel of what we believe in the Nation of Islam is that what our people have suffered in America for more than 400 years is part of what qualifies us to be the people of God, a people that the scripture says would become a holy nation, a priestly people, wherein all of the other members of the human family, when they seek God, he would be found among us. A people that, even though they suffered and they went through pain, they come from that furnace of affliction purified. And the scripture says they would be a blessing to the nations of the earth. So even though conflict resolution is in front of us as a need, we don't want to go about our work having that as the goal. Brotherhood and unity is the goal, and conflict resolution is a beneficial side effect.
Praise be to Allah. You mentioned about sides early, going into that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's a big thing now between, as you mentioned earlier, with Kendrick Lamar and Drake. And this is not something new as far as in hip hop. We was talking before you got on about how a beef that had turned the whole coast against another coast, east against west. And in the history of hip hop, there have been a lot of beef, etc. And some chop it up as the culture of hip hop, a lot of times, because that's the thing. We go against each other. We stand in the ring as if it's a fight, but we just about to rap against each other. So, what would you say is the difference if any, between when it comes to battle raps and also like battle raps and also like beef songs or diss tracks? Because it I don't know, to me it seemed like the earlier days, like I'm just gonna rap about how good I am. You can't get me, like I'm that bad. I'm not gonna get into your mama, your aunt, your girlfriend, baby mama, and I did it. Like it's a whole different level of the game that take it to a different level. So it just don't seem like you could chop it up as culture, especially not in the sense of like it done advanced. Like, well, we just doing the same thing y'all did back in the days when y'all would rap about, the bridge is over or something like that. Like, so to me, it got to be some kind of difference. So if you could kind of, go into that, it's not the same, and share in that in differences.
No, that's a great question. And it reminds me of a section of the presentation. I want to try to put this slide up here. It actually has a short video clip in it, but I want to play it and then I'll add some more response to that question. But this is a popular clip from the Breakfast Club interview with Leo Cohen, who is not just a hip hop mogul, but he's also the president of YouTube Music. So I want to show this clip and then I come back to that question.
Praise be to
God. It didn't play the clip. I forgot. I saved it in a different file format, but you can go and get the clip. But the clip is with Leo Cohen justifying putting out artists who are very toxic and who advocate the use of drugs, who advocate the use, of guns. And Charlemagne and DJ Envy, they were saying, well, Leo, don't you think that's kind of hypocritical? And he basically justified it saying, well, maybe it is, but I got mouths to feed, In other words, the economic bottom line of the powerful white men, many of whom are from the Jewish community, who control Black music, in their calculations, their bottom line is a greater consideration than peace and upliftment for the Black community. So again, hip hop in its earliest manifestations, organically coming out of New York City in the early 1970s. Of course, I believe it was last year, hip hop celebrated its 50th anniversary. Well, it was a long time before big, powerful music companies took notice. It was a long time before hip hop in words became corporate. So when the powerful corporations, when they took over hip hop, and I think I want to show another slide because this is very significant in just looking at, what happened to the culture and where you end up going from battle rap to all of these toxic manifestations of hip hop music. In the early 1990s, they showed that it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad who had become very influential inside of hip hop music. And I don't think I have it in this one, but what makes that so profound, Brother Chad, is that at that same time that they had discovered the Honorable Elijah Muhammad having this great influence inside of hip hop, was at the same time hip hop was becoming corporate. And is at the same time, the early 1990s, when we see this dramatic shift in hip hop music that went from what the scholars call predominantly message rap to gangster rap as the first corporate sponsored iteration of hip hop music that journalists were writing about in the early 1990s had become a place where Elijah Muhammad, as they were saying, from beyond the grave, was exerting an extraordinary influence as they heard all of these MCs who were parroting the core message of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we see that battle rap is not the battle rap of days gone by. It is a new corporate sponsored bloodlust, a new iteration of an old art form that the white rulers and owners of hip hop music promote, nurture, and develop to fatten their own bottom line and to, at the same time, further destabilize Black communities.
Thank you, sir. Praise be to God.
Yes, sir. And so, I want to ask just, in instances where the beef results in, unfortunately, someone dying, what does resolution look like for the people involved, for the grieving families, and even for the grieving communities? As we talk about the rap and hip hop community, when we see, some of our rap and hip hop artists dying from things like this, we can look at, and we brought up Nipsey Hussle in the beginning, we can look at that. But, what does resolution and healing look like for, the families and communities involved?
Well, I think it depends on the nature of the beef and what has the beef produced. Obviously, when their lives lost, then that's different. You see, I know that Allah says in the Quran that, there is to be an offering made, when lives are lost, and in certain cases, Allah does speak of retaliation in matters of the slain, you see. So the Quran gives to us a broad range of options depending upon the nature of what has taken place. So resolution ultimately for most kinds of conflicts should revolve around two core principles, and that is justice and atonement. Now, we can't have real justice. We can't have real conflict resolution if we only understand that I'm supposed to just apologize for my wrong that I've done to you. Justice involves the actual performance of some act that is offered as a repair of damage that has been done. When the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gave that majestic message at the Million Man March in 1995, the minister made at the center of his guidance to those nearly 2 million brothers, the idea of atonement. And, I think over the years, Sister Anissa and Brother Chad, a lot of times we misconstrued atonement and we reduced it to merely an apology. But the minister gave us 8 steps of atonement. And ultimately, the atoning person has to accept responsibility for the damage that has been done. And then an agreement has to be made as to what can be offered to repair the damage. Even the Holy Quran speaks of blood wit, wherein there is some type of monetary compensation that can be offered when a life, is accidentally taken. And we know that in our communities, most of the time, there is no real resolution of conflict because there's always this kind of attitude that the streets and the culture of the streets, the law of the streets, is some virtuous rectifier of all things gone wrong. But if we are to move toward what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, he wouldn't rest until the Holy Quran is the law under which his people live, then I think we have to become studious of the Quranic message, as well as the divine guidance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his message of atonement, so that we can look at what resolution looks like on a case-by-case basis. And Muslims, it's one thing for us to say that Islam is the religion of peace. Many people say that when our critics try to say Islam is about terrorism, and then our response is, no, Islam is a religion of peace. The word Islam and the word salam, they come from the same root. They mean peace. Well, this means that as a believer in Islam, I should have a certain basic ability to create peace or to produce peace when there is chaos. And so I think that we have a duty and a responsibility to be peacemakers, to be conflict resolvers, to be honest brokers, you see. And I know in many correctional facilities over the years, whenever there were beefs between rival sets or rival gangs, many of them would go to the Muslims, and they would get the Muslims to be the arbiter, the honest broker, to help them bring about peace again. So this is not anything new and novel as it relates to Muslims. It's actually a reminder of what is all throughout Islamic teachings and practice.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you, dear brother. Our dear sister Sheila has the video, Student Minister Demetric. If you'll mind her still playing it, she could play it with
That'd be great. That'd be great.
All right. That'll work. We can get that video up. Yeah, because that was a powerful interview. So we're
just a short clip of Leor, not the whole video, because it's a long video.
Oh, yes,
a clip of Leor, how he justified,
right,
his promotion of toxicity in Black music.
Okay, we'll check and see if you got the short clip, because I know, yeah, you're right. It was a whole interview.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see why she's setting that up. Let's see. All right, I think she got it going on. This is very interesting too. I'm very thankful for that series. And I got a chance to watch 2 of them. I didn't get a chance to watch a third one yet, Student Minister.
All praises be to Allah, brother. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to check it out. I appreciate it.
Praise be to Allah. It was well put together. I like how you was going into it, like how it laid up. All right.
All praises due to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Sister Sheila, you could go ahead. All right.
Really rough, particularly on women. But I think it helped change the course of the crack epidemic. I don't know what's this opioid thing, man.
Well, being a crackhead wasn't cool back then. Being a crackhead wasn't cool. Now they seem like they're making it cool to be drinking lean and syrup, and
it's the most dangerous. It's the most dangerous thing that's facing our society.
So why sign an artist that would promote that?
Because I already answered that question. You weren't paying attention. She asked me talent or issues, and I said talent. But I have to. I can't give up on people.
But I'm saying that's hypocritical, though. You're saying
it's opportunistic. Yeah. I got people to feed. I got a business to run.
You're gonna make Dame Dash take this clip and call you a culture vulture.
Who's Dame Dash? You brought him up. I don't even know him. So you bring his name up. I don't even know him. So
y'all made a lot of money together.
Made a lot of
money.
Come
on, Leo. Don't do that to him.
I don't know him. I really don't. So I don't know what to tell you. I won't.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad Sister put it up there, because it's in the lecture series. But it just goes to show that kind of individual has such extraordinary control over Black music And yet he's clearly here justifying the promotion of things that are bad for the Black community, using his economic bottom line as the justification. In other words, because I got to make money, I don't mind promoting stuff that's harmful for your children. It's extraordinary.
It surely is, brother, Student Minister Demetric. I never forget, because that's my background. I worked in the studio a long time, dear brother, and I would see music directors, they would come in the studio. And I remember during the time of we was doing Ply's album. And, he had a song that he wanted to promote that was, it was a good song. It kind of gave you the feel of like how when Pac do songs, that's it talk about, when Pac would talk about a dear mama or something like that, Brenda got a baby. And the music director was just straight up telling him like, that's not you. Like, it's not going to sell. Like, that's not you. Like, we need you to come with that hard street stuff. And I remember that song never making the light of day, but it was very, very powerful song, and they was just straight up telling them that. And, a lot of times that happened with the hip hop artists, they were put down. It's like, are you trying to kick knowledge or something like that? Make it sound like it's bad of what they're doing. And, when you think about beef, I was looking it up, because it's not the terminology is not something that, especially with the new generation, like you'll hear used and you'll wonder why. So when I was looking it up and I was seeing how, as an intransitive verb, it deals with like a complaint, like you have a beef with somebody, it's a complaint about something. But my thing is, in dealing with above and beyond conflict resolutions, like when there's a complaint or disagreement, like when it becomes what some will feel like irreconcilable, but the two parties do agree, okay, well, look, we're going to just separate and go our own ways. Can averting one another resolve a conflict? And I ask that because even with sometime when two people are going at it, what about the bystanders? What about that person? Man, brother, you going to let him do that? Like, I don't know, man. Like, man, I don't know, man. That's going to take away from us, because everybody got homeboys, like, especially when it comes to hip hop. It just ain't you. You got the PRs, you got different people that's in your ear about that, and it sells. And how you going to avoid somebody in that industry? Like what happened? Do 2 years down the line, does it resolve? Does 3 years, the time resolve it? Or do you really have to is it a process that you would feel like you really have to go through to really heal that situation?
Well, I think if you're talking about music and the entertainment aspect of it, I think it's a lot more difficult for an artist to do what J. Cole did. And I really love what J. Cole did. And I think most people, even though he initially, faced some backlash from the public, I think because Jay has always been quasi-conscious, that I think that people were able to accept him taking a principled stance after he, saw that this thing is heating up. This could be Biggie versus Tupac reloaded. I don't want to bring toxicity to the culture. So he made his response, and then he made an apology and bowed out and basically told Kendrick, hey, do whatever you need to do, but I don't want to be a party to this anymore. And so I think that, it showed a lot of maturity on his part. And I think that, that is one of the things that you would hope that more artists would be more mature. I mean, in reality, even though hip hop keeps its youthful allure, most of the giants of hip hop, they are seasoned adults at this point, and so we should no longer be young and provocable anymore, because you're right, that comes from the old backyard, schoolyard culture, of baddest one hit my hand, or putting a stick on somebody's shoulder and tell them go over there and knock that stick off. Believe it or not, that goes back to slavery. I literally have that in one of our presentations. Wow. That old putting a chip on somebody's shoulder or stick on somebody's shoulder, that goes back to the plantation days. So hopefully, you know, artists are mature, you know, because once you have gotten to a certain place in your career, I mean, my God, you have a lot to lose. And you have to think about, you know, having a lot to lose versus proving that you beat this other guy, you know, and you know, like right now, people are saying, you know, that Kendrick, you know, destroyed Drake. And there's a great argument for that, you know, because Drake kind of, you know, he quit participating after a certain point. But now, you know, should Drake be like he was, you know, when he was a teenager in his 20s? You know, I'm just driven by, he got to get this guy. You know, Drake's probably a billionaire, right? You know what I mean? I don't know, but he's been the leading selling hip hop artist probably for a decade or more. So just like we talked about when we looked at the research on respect and disrespect being a root cause for violent crimes in poor communities, after you mature and after you arrive at a certain destination as a human being, as a man, as an artist, you shouldn't be easily provocable anymore. You know, in other words, Brother Chad, you know, we have to grow up at a certain point.
It's rise above emotions. Come on.
But I found that slide. I wanted to put it up here.
Okay, praise
because as we saw the video of Leor, you know, is good to show that Leor comes to be one of the controllers and rulers of hip hop music after the corporate music executives worked to remove the influence of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from the culture. Now, this was in 1991. And it said the title of the article was, "With rap's growing popularity comes a new hard edge." And one of the quotes that we extracted from this article states, Elijah Muhammad, the longtime leader of the Nation of Islam, is having a deep influence on rap music. 15 years after his death, their words, not mine, as I believe he's alive, but they continue with unprecedented directness. A number of new rappers are quoting Muhammad's core dogma that African Americans are descended from the tribe of Shabazz, the original man created by Allah. So it's on record that they noticed that, wow, this rap thing that they kind of thought was going to hit and miss. A lot of them probably thought it was going to come and then it was going to go away, you know. But as it became clear that hip hop was here to stay, and it became so influential of youth culture, and they looked and they said, wait a minute, the most popular artists, they're reciting to their millions of fans the ideas of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you know. And I have a similar one of these slides that shows that they also show that Minister Farrakhan was very influential in hip hop in the early 1990s, the same time period when the powerful white men who rule hip hop today began to take control of it. So that's a comparison and a contrasting. Hip hop under the influence of Elijah Muhammad, positive, inspiring, uplifting, peace-oriented. Hip hop under the likes of Leo Cohen, promoting guns, violence, drugs, the sexual objectification of women, you see. So, as they say, you don't have to condemn a dirty glass, just put a clean glass up beside it.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. And so, you know, I want to ask, because, you know, we kind of started this conversation talking about the dope busters back in the day. And of course, you know, today we have the 10,000 Fearless. And but you also brought up just the atonement process. And so, you know, of course, the atonement process came about through the Million Man March through that, we had the anniversary of Justice or Else, where 10,000 Fearless came about from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's words. And so what can the Black community gain from some of these messages from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, from, the Million Man March, Justice or Else, the 10,000 Fearless, what can we gain from, just some of his words, and what actions should we take from his words to, stop the beef in our communities?
What's amazing, Sister Anissa, is that because Allah caused the minister to be so ahead of everybody else, the old messages of Minister Farrakhan are right on time today. So there are people that would say, well, what is this young lady talking about, the Million Man March? That was way back in 1995. Yeah, even though the minister delivered it in 1995, it was far in advance of what most of the people were prepared to accept at that time. See, God is never a follower of trends. God sets the trends. And so he causes his messengers to speak that which he will later cause the people to walk right into. You see, so even a message like the minister delivering it in October 16, 1995, but he's delivered so many since then, is still so rich because we need to learn how to atone. We need to have an understanding of our history of suffering. You see, that entire message, they interviewed and they surveyed certain Christian pastors in the aftermath of the minister's message on the mall on October 16th. The likes of the great Reverend Wyatt T. Walker, a contemporary of Dr. King and Harry Belafonte, a lot of great pastors, and they wanted these pastors to critique the minister's Million Man March message on the basis of how you would critique a great sermon. And they all said that, it was on the level of a 10 or above. It was magnificent, you see. And so these were pastors, critiquing that message on the basis of how they would critique one another's sermons, and they were bowled over by it. So the minister gave guidance there. He's given guidance since then. And we need to take the minister's lectures and stop just listening to the minister's lectures as a form of entertainment or nostalgia. And we have to listen to the minister's message and identify the action items that are in those messages. So as we're talking tonight, from beef to brotherhood, conflict resolution and beyond, well, the minister has said we should establish conflict resolution in our communities, conflict resolution centers. I know my brother, Student Minister Willie Muhammad, and then we also have one here in Memphis, set up a beef hotline. Well, what is that? It's a number that people can call if you want help in resolving your beef. We will help you. We had a very ugly situation just a few days ago where two sisters got into a disagreement at a Church's Chicken. One of the sisters worked there, the other one was a customer. Words was exchanged back and forth. And after the dust settled and the smoke cleared, one of the sisters was killed. So we have to now operationalize divine revelation. See, the early Muslims following Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they didn't just sit around and talk about the beauty of Quran. They didn't just sit around and say, oh, we thank Allah for Prophet Muhammad. They did that, but they also took the Quran and they operationalized it. We have to become a people who operationalize divine guidance. Otherwise, we are people who are like the people in Ezekiel's time. Every time I read when Ezekiel preached to the valley of the dry bones, and it says that Ezekiel preached to them, and all the bones would do is just shake and rattle. In other words, they were responding to the servant of God, but they were not exhibiting the proper response. So Minister Farrakhan is not some vain teacher seeking accolades and preaching out of a motivation of self-aggrandizement. So he doesn't come before us just so we will applaud. He doesn't come before us just so we'll cheer, just so we'll say, man, Farrakhan is bad. Farrakhan, that's my man. No. What gives joy to a man like Minister Farrakhan is that he teaches and then we act upon what he teaches. So we got to be about the business of operationalizing the divine revelation of Allah that he has given to us in this period of the rebuilding of the nation of Islam through the majestic ministry of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Praise be to Allah. Wonderful, Student Minister Demetric. We thank you, dear brother.
And thank you, dear brother.
Alhamdulillah.
Is the time up? I have been, time flies when you're having fun, brother. You had to,
yeah, I know. It's 8:46
because I get long-winded sometimes talking about this.
It's all good. We most definitely want to. We're going to keep it within 2 hours because for some reason, with StreamYards, if we go past, it won't allow us to really put it out there and to share, and put it online and everything like that. So we most definitely, I want to give you the opportunity before we get ready to go that anything else you would like to speak on that you didn't get a chance to mention. And also if you could tell them where they can watch the lectures on Beef to Brotherhood or any upcoming things that you have coming dealing with that, if the series is going to stop, because it's 3 of them, right? Am I missing any?
I think it is, but truth be told, what we realized, Student Minister Chad, is that there was another element to conflict resolution. So even though there's 3 parts called From Beef to Brotherhood, we followed that with a series called Winning the War Within the Self. And so it's really, you could say, a companion to Beef to Brotherhood, because, the minister has said that our own internal conflict is at the base of our conflict with one another. So in other words, we have to go from looking at conflict from one brother versus another brother, one sister versus another sister, to, wow, I'm showing up present in all of these various spaces while I'm yet internally conflicted against my own self.
Wow.
And so tomorrow, we will be teaching part 3 of Winning the War Within the Self. And this is a series, again, that's a companion to Beef to Brotherhood, where we show the power, for example, of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's study guides. And we look at the main areas where Black folk, especially, we have had to live a life of being very much so conflicted. You know, I mean, we're Black, but we were taught to hate Black.
Isn't that so?
I mean, that's a hellified conflict to be in, that, you're expected to hate the way God made you, you see. And so we go into that. We go into how the minister has identified a wobble in human nature that also presents a problem, as well as the social engineering, as we mentioned earlier, of American society that makes it so hard for us to know what's right and then to do the right that we know. So this is a companion to the series. And if you want to watch it, we have a YouTube channel called Researching the Minister. Researching the Minister is the YouTube channel. And we would love for those that are tuned in to watch it and share with us, your feedback, what you think about the series, and, share it with others if you think it's good information.
Praise be to Allah. Well, we thank you, dear brother. One of the things I enjoyed when I was watching it is how you gave scripture references. You talked about from the Holy Quran. You talked about during Prophet Muhammad time, along with, of course, quotes from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I thought that was wonderful because, you know, as spiritual people and as students in the ministry, I think it's good that we can show like this is not something that is new. God then gave us a way principle-wise to handle situations like this all throughout the scriptures. He was showing about during the time of Prophet Muhammad to modern time. Mm-hmm. And it was wonderful just how you laid it out. I always love your slides and the
praise be to Allah.
You know, so it was wonderful. I'm looking forward to number 3. I just didn't get around to it yet, but I most definitely went through 1 and 2. You know,
all praises due to Allah.
The 2, and then inshallah I get to number 3. So may Allah continue to bless you in your efforts. Anything that we could do to support and get it out there too. You know, we look forward to you know, having you back and to see some more of the you know, what happened as this took place, as you're going out in the community and everything. Because I know even on the lectures, you was giving some testimonies of being out and about. And with the gun told you know, I think you mentioned about, I think it was a 14-year-old or 16-year-old that said, I think you say they had like 6 guns.
Yeah. No, brother. Yeah, the babies, you know, are armed to the teeth. You know, it's a hellified situation, a hellified time that we living in when babies are armed to the teeth. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we most definitely going to keep our people in prayers and all of your efforts and what you're doing, Student Minister Demetric. Always wonderful to have you on the show. It's
my honor and privilege, my brother.
Praise be to Allah. Thank you once again. Family, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all of the questions. I hope we got a chance to answer all of the question that was coming in. We thank everybody for tuning in to Closing the Gap. You know, we had a hiatus for a while, and please continue to do so. Whether it's a live show or repeat, it's always something because you might have missed it. And keep telling others to also tune in by Allah's grace. And for those that's tuning in, whether it's your very first or second time, however many times, we ask that you, if you would like to support us too, please help us in supporting us. Where you can use PayPal at kingdom1@aol.com or Zelle with Closing the Gap broadcast at gmail.com. Everything that you give, it helps to go towards keeping the show going. Of course, we do have bills. So whether it's $1, $10, $100, anything that you can give to support us. And you can also cash out us at $CTG broadcast. All right. Once again, you see it scrolling at the bottom of the screen, but anything that you can do to help us is very appreciated. But the most important thing you can give us is your time. So we thank you for giving your time, extending your time to us, and also share as we finish. Those that didn't get a chance to watch it, please share. Any other closing announcements before I get into the other closing announcements, Sister Nisa? Just want to open the floor for you. Anything that you would like to say in closing remarks?
Yes, sir. Just thank you, and you know, for allowing me to guest host the show today. And I really enjoyed Brother Demetric's, you know, answers and responses to the topic on a very serious topic as we addressed. And so, you know, thankful to, you know, the show for existing and, you know, bringing these relevant topics to our community.
Praise be to Allah. We thank you, dear sister, for all you do with the Final Call newspaper and also just representing the youth and always stepping up to the bat when Sister Starla called on you. So we very, very much appreciate you also, dear sister. Wonderful job today. Just some closing announcement before we dismiss. We want everybody to please continue to support Closing the Gap. As you see down at the bottom, we want everybody also just to, you know, support also locally. If you're in this area, we want you to, if you want mind, you know, to come out to Muhammad Mosque number 47 tomorrow. Great topic of discussion, the black man and woman created from a single being. And inshallah, I will be speaking myself. So please come if you're in this area, come check us out. All right. To Muhammad Mosque number 47 by Allah's grace. All right. And if you're not in this area, you can always go to NOI.org and tune in to our live webcast from our national headquarters. Please get yourself some kind of spiritual insight for tomorrow. We make time for everything else. Please, let's make time for God, that we can better understand him and build an intimate relationship with him. All right. So tune into something or come out to something tomorrow. We have Nation of Islam mosques all around in different cities, study groups, satellites set up in different cities. So please tune in. Once again, that's at NOI.org, as you see on the screen tomorrow at the different time period. We thank you once again, family, for tuning in to Closing the Gap. Please keep our dear brother, Student Minister James, in our prayers for speedy and full recovery. He is doing well, doing better by today, and also by the day, and also just looking forward to being back among us. He have tuned in. He made plenty comments, as he was watching and giving the thumbs up and thanking our dear brother for being on and thanking us, for just making it happen. So we could continue to promote and bless him with our prayers and also with donations to help out the show to keep it going. May Allah continue to bless us all. We look forward to seeing you, inshallah, next week. Again, right here on the same time, same channel, Closing the Gap. May Allah continue to bless us all. Assalamu alaikum, family.